When I went to Congress, those were the people I was determined to represent. And if I can take a minute to say, it was hard, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was a biology major in college, and I had a degree in theology, and I found myself on the banking committee. Something happened there that I think changed the world and shaped the problems that we now face. Arthur Burns, who was head of the Federal Reserve, George Shultz, who was the head of the Secretary of the Treasury, and Paul Volcker, who was Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, came to visit us. It was my first hearing on the International Finance Committee. And they said that there had been agreements since 1944 that were made at Bretton Woods in New Hampshire that the dollar basically ruled the world, and the dollar was tied to gold, and everybody else's currency was tied to the dollar. And they came to say that they think that that regime has served its usefulness and it ought to be abandoned.
This Bretton Woods Agreement. The
Bretton Woods Agreements. Well, nobody else knew much more than me, even though there were some economics professors on that banking committee. And nobody was going to argue with those three gentlemen. I was the last one on the committee, and I said to Arthur Burns, "Excuse me, sir, but if you don't have the dollar tied to something, aren't people going to play politics with our dollar?" And he took a puff on his pipe and he said, "Young man, you'll soon learn that the dollar does not need you to protect it." Well, I was politely, maybe not so politely, put in my place, except that at that time, oil was $3.50 a barrel, and in 6 months, oil was $30 a barrel. In 9 months, it was $50 a barrel. And what I think happened in that meeting, which we never discussed again, was that we went off the gold standard and went on the oil standard. We can say whatever we want to about ending our dependence on foreign oil, but until we get back to some kind of a cooperative agreement, like the agreement that we had at Bretton Woods, that stabilizes currencies and allows us to plan long range, developed nor developed countries are going to be able to solve our crises. Now, that was the first one. The second one is they used to talk about Regulation Q. And I didn't know anything about that, except that that was the regulation that said that savings and loans had to build houses, and commercial banks could only do commercial lending to corporations.
So they separated the two.
It separated the two. And I was always on the side of Regulation Q because I figured I was on the side of the homeowner. Well, as soon as I left and Jimmy Carter left, they ended those Bretton Woods agreements. They had ended those Bretton Woods agreements. They did away with Regulation Q. And not long after that, we had the savings and loan crisis, which cost the country $160 billion to bail out savings and loans. So we should have learned something by this. Now, nobody's talking about this in the campaign. And you can't get elected if you talk serious stuff like this. But our country cannot survive unless we have organizations like the League of Women Voters who are ready to dig into the hard economic realities of how this world is going to live together. And we're voting not for somebody to defend America. America can no longer be defended, period. We are defenseless. We must lead. There is no way that we can run the world. I mean, we learned in World War II that a depression in Germany caused the invasion of Austria and Poland and the Holocaust. And we had to get involved. depressions and failed states in the third world have led to terrorism. And unless we are able to lead the world will not survive as we know it. And when the world has survived, it's because there has been visionary American leadership that's been willing and able to work with people with whom they disagree and work out problems.